How to analyze an offer on a co-op apartment in New York City. We will demystify this topic in the following video. I'm Nick at Houseit. We are the largest for sale by owner and buyer agent commission rebate company based here in New York City, established in 2014. Visit our website, houseit.com, to learn about ways to save money when buying and selling here in New York City. So you've received an offer on a co-op apartment. Congratulations. Now the hard part begins. How do you analyze an offer? There are many more considerations than the price and the contingencies, particularly in the case of a co-op. More specifically, your analysis of an offer on a co-op must include an evaluation of the purchaser's debt-to-income ratio, a look at the post-closing liquidity, as well as an analysis of any unique purchasing structures to ensure that all three of these factors are in compliance with your cooperative board's policies. Let's start with debt-to-income ratio, as this is objectively the most important. Your typical co-op in the city is looking for a debt-to-income ratio around low mid-20s, maximum low 30s. So a typical debt-to-income ratio of, say, 28% is okay for most buildings. Stricter buildings will like 25% or less, and your less flexible co-op building may be okay with something in the low 30s, perhaps 32 or 33%. So if you haven't already, it's essential that you figure out what your co-op is okay with as it relates to debt-to-income ratios. You can often find this in the purchase application, and that should also state the board's minimum down payment, for example, as well as any post-closing liquidity requirement. But what if your co-op doesn't state a debt-to-income ratio? This is very common in New York, and in particular, the purchase application might not make any reference to any restrictions on the type of income or the debt-to-income ratio that may be required. So if you don't have clarification here, you should proceed with caution. You certainly can check with your managing agent. If you know a board member, you could informally reach out to them as well. Under the assumption that we don't know what your building is okay with, you probably want to operate with a strong degree of caution and try to find somebody who is below 25%. If your purchaser has a large component of income from a bonus or overtime, it's important to check with your co-op to figure out how they will allow you to utilize this in your calculations. Many co-ops will not allow you to use bonus or overtime income unless that income has a track record of at least 3 years. This is particularly challenging if your applicant is slowly ascending in the corporate hierarchy and let's say their bonus this year is considerably higher than in the years prior. Now this might be all good and well and actually a very good sign about your buyer. But for the purposes of the debt-to-income ratio, the co-op might not allow you to include all of this bonus income. Certainly the amount that is much higher than the previous 2 years, you might have to exclude this from your calculation. Some co-ops will also have restrictions on passive income. In these buildings, the only income that may be used is active wage income. This is ostensibly designed to deter purchasers who may not have a real job, who may simply be living off of investments or other sorts of passive income streams. So it's important to check with your co-op as to the rules around this type of income. No analysis of the debt-to-income ratio would be complete without also thoroughly investigating the inputs on the expense side of the equation. In particular, you'll want to double check that the monthly mortgage and maintenance payments used to calculate the debt-to-income ratio are accurate. Specifically for the mortgage, you'll want to make sure that the mortgage interest rate is realistic and that also they've used a particular interest rate figure and the correct offer price when calculating the down payment and the consequential amount of the monthly mortgage payment. It's also important to double check as to whether or not the purchaser has any sort of recurring monthly liabilities, such as a car lease or student loans. Anything that shows up on a credit report must be included for the purposes of calculating the debt-to-income ratio. So even if your purchaser has a 25% debt-to-income ratio, excluding perhaps student loans, this will not necessarily guarantee that they will qualify for the co-op, because if you add the student loans, that debt-to-income ratio could hit 30%, or as a minimum, it will just go up more than what the board may permit. The second thing to evaluate with a co-op offer is the amount of post-closing liquidity. Post-closing liquidity is the number of months or years the purchaser has in liquid assets after closing, which factors in the down payment as well as buyer closing costs. For example, if a purchaser's mortgage and maintenance is $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year, and if a building requires 2 years of post-closing liquidity, the purchaser must have $120,000 of assets to her or his name after removing the down payment as well as closing costs. The specific definition of liquid assets varies by building, so this is absolutely something you do need to check, especially if the numbers are close. Not all co-ops will allow 401k assets or any tax-deferred assets for that matter, to be utilized in this calculation. In some instances, a co-op board may utilize a more holistic approach to a buyer's financial qualifications. If, for example, a buyer has a higher than desired debt-to-income ratio, but they have, say, 5, 6, or 7 years of post-closing liquidity, well, in a holistic analysis, this may very well be enough for the co-op to justify approving this particular purchaser. So again, this is really something you want to do research on. Try to figure out how you can get a straight answer in your building, whether that's just reviewing the application, if they're transparent, or if that's contacting management or calling up your friend on the board. You'll want to do whatever it takes as a seller of a co-op in New York City to A, ensure that you fully understand your co-op's requirements, and to B, make sure that the actual applicant that you are reviewing does actually have a chance of being approved. The third consideration when reviewing an offer for a co-op is the particular type of purchasing structure. What do we mean by this? Well, there are a number of ways to buy a co-op beyond just having one purchaser simply buy the property outright. For example, there might be a co-purchaser. There could be a guarantor. It could be a parents buying for children, and more commonly, there could be a gift involved. The applicant's parents or grandparents might be offering some sort of contribution towards the ultimate purchase. Each co-op has its own rules about every single one of these things. So if you receive an offer and there's a large gift, or if you receive an offer and you hear the word guarantor, parents buying for children, anything that is not the most vanilla base case of an individual buying a co-op for her or himself, you'll want to review this very thoroughly and ensure that you are in compliance with your building's guidelines. One final pro tip, going back to debt-to-income ratio. Many co-ops in New York City do not permit adjustable rate mortgages. If your buyer has calculated a mortgage payment using an adjustable rate mortgage and your co-op does not permit adjustable rate mortgages, well, this purchaser will be rejected if they don't switch their loan product to a traditional 30-year fixed mortgage. Therefore, if your offer is coming from a finance buyer, please make sure to analyze what type of loan product they're using and try to figure out whether or not your co-op is okay with it. Some co-ops might allow adjustable rate mortgages, but they will require you to utilize the highest possible interest rate under the terms of the ARM to calculate DTI. And in most cases, this interest rate is so high that it would make it all but impossible for this particular type of purchaser to have a debt-to-income ratio that remains in compliance with the guidelines. So you really want to have this conversation about the loan product well in advance of an accepted offer. You don't want to leave it to the last minute. We have seen instances where a purchaser is either rejected by the co-op, asked to resubmit an application with a different loan product. And by that time, interest rates might be significantly higher, which would all but guarantee a very difficult conversation between the attorneys, the buyer and the seller, you and the buyer's agent. We hope this video was helpful. I'm Nick at Houseit. Visit our website, houseit.com, to learn about ways to save money when buying and selling in New York City. And if you enjoyed this video, do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.